Welcome to Andy and Friends podcast. I'm your friend Andy, and maybe by the end of this episode, you'll be my Bitcoin mining friend. In this episode, I'm going to answer the big question, is Bitcoin mining worth it? I'll tell you what mining is, go over the current profitability, share my results so far, and answer a bunch of questions that you asked me about mining the orange coin. Let's jump into it. And the first big question is, what even is Bitcoin mining? And I'm not going to explain all of this because there's plenty of videos out there that do a great job of going into depth, but essentially you use a specialized computer to do some numbers guessing, and if you guess the right numbers with that machine, you win some Bitcoin. But at its very simplest term, it's a box you plug into an electrical outlet, and it spits out Bitcoin into your wallet completely passively every day. And that's why it attracts so many people. That's why there's such an allure around it, because it truly is, when it's all operating correctly, truly passive income. And really, with Bitcoin mining, there's three variables that you need to consider. One is your electricity costs and like the electricity setup and where the machine's going to go. The mining difficulty, which is part of the software of Bitcoin, and the higher that number gets, the more difficult it is to mine Bitcoin, the less Bitcoin you get as you mine. And then lastly is there's the variable of fees, which I'll get more into in just a bit in this episode. So let's start off by talking about my experience. How long have I been mining Bitcoin, and how much have I made? Well, I've been mining Bitcoin for almost 3 years now. I started mining Bitcoin in 2022. In that time, I've mined nearly 3.5 BTC in total, which as of today is worth just under $300,000. At Bitcoin's recent peak of almost $109,000, that's my entire bag that I've mined so far was worth $380,000. And in that time, I've spent a bit over 6 figures buying all these machines. I've spent getting closer and closer to 6 figures on my electricity and my hosting to mine that amount. So let's talk about how much I'm making right now, where the market is today. And as I record this, Bitcoin is right around $85,000. I'm recording this in the middle of March 2025. And as of this exact moment, with my nearly 3.7 petahash of hash rate online and hashing away, I am earning just under $5,400 a month in total revenue. And I'm spending about $3,600 a month to pay for the electricity and the hosting of those machines. So I'm left with a profit of $1,735 a month at this exact moment. I'm currently mining 0.063 Bitcoin per month. And if we just zoom back a little bit to the most recent all-time high that Bitcoin has made of 109,000, all the same variables with the exception of the price changed. I would be making in profit about $3,300 a month if Bitcoin, or when Bitcoin goes back to that price. And then if we zoom even more into the future, I think that Bitcoin is going to go even higher. So what about if Bitcoin goes as high as $250,000 in price? What will my today's earnings be worth at that point? Because everything I mine today, I hold for the future. Well, the same exact amount of Bitcoin that I'm mining every month right now would at that point be worth almost $16,000 in total revenue, or just over $12,000 in profit per month. And if you think that sounds fantastical, or like, I'm cooking the books a little bit, I'm adjusting the numbers in my favor so it sounds good to justify this whole thing. Well, I've been mining Bitcoin for 3 years now. If I go back to when I first started, the difficulty and how much Bitcoin I was making per month was significantly higher than it is today. I was making fairly large fractions of a coin every single month. And if I actually plug those numbers into the calculator and I look back, my number that I've retroactively mined in those early months in that first year is somewhere in the order of magnitude between 15,000 to $35,000 a month in profit. That is locked in. I've made that money. It's sitting in my Bitcoin address because all that Bitcoin I mined in those early days, I've mined and held. And so I think that in the future, as Bitcoin goes higher and higher, and as I mine more and more Bitcoin and stack it up, it's all going to be retroactively worth way more than it is today. And that's the entire gamble of what I'm doing. So those are some cool numbers, and that's exciting sounding. But are these Bitcoin mining machines, these ASICs, are they still worth buying today? That's a really tough question. Because there is a bunch of variables. As the price of Bitcoin goes higher, so do the prices of these machines. And then as Bitcoin hits its all-time highs, and then it just goes down, and we enter into a crypto bear market, well, then the machine prices also go down. So you might think, okay, I'm not going to buy now. I'm interested in this. I'm going to wait until the next bear market. I'm going to wait till Bitcoin goes up to 150,000 this cycle, or maybe it's 200, 300, maybe something crazy like that. I'm going to wait till 2026 or 2027 until we're in a bear market and the prices go down. That's a great strategy to get machine prices at lower prices than they are today. However, it's also a balancing act because the difficulty for Bitcoin mining just keeps going up and up and up. And if that keeps happening into the future, the longer you wait to buy machines, the less Bitcoin you get per day, which, is a balancing act between the price of the machine and how much you're getting per day. And you have to kind of balance those two things. But, the very first year of a bear market, machine prices will go down, but they'll be significantly lower on year 2 or 3 of a bear market. The machines I bought in 2022 were significantly higher than the machine prices I bought in 2023 or even the beginning of 2024. So you have to balance that, but then also you have to think, what are my goals? If your goal is just to get as much Bitcoin over time as possible from the machines, well, then maybe it's buying them sooner than later. If your goal is to buy them before we have our big bull run and Bitcoin goes to $200,000 plus, and then you want to sell the machines, which is something I want to do, well, then buying them now when they're slightly depressed in price from where they were just a few months ago, so you can then sell them for higher in, 6 to 12 months from now, is the play. There's also other variables, which I'll talk about in just a bit, again, like fees, the Bitcoin network transaction fees that are completely like a complete wild card. But before I get into that, let's talk about where you put these things and how that whole process would work. Because a lot of people ask me, Andy, can I run these machines at my house? Can I compete with large mining farms? And again, you have to, there's a whole variety of considerations, and the main one is your electric rate. And not just, is your electric rate cheap enough? The average electric rate across the entire United States is about 16 cents per kilowatt hour. And at that rate today, unless you have the absolute highest end machine, you're probably not going to be profitable. So ideally, you want to be at like 10 cents per kilowatt hour or even less. So if you're above that, you might already be a non-starter for running these at your house. But there's not just the electricity rate, there's the electricity considerations. All of the big machines require 220 volt high amperage connections, like what you plug an electric dryer into. And so if you don't have a spot like that already, you have to get that installed, and that can be a few $100 to a few $1,000. And if you're going to do multiple machines, you have to have a high enough amperage connection you can run multiple machines, and you have to make sure your electrical box is set up for that. And there's a whole bunch of considerations around that. And then there's the heat. These are 3,000 to 4,000 watt space heaters effectively. So you have to constantly take the air around them and get rid of it so that they're not going to overheat wherever they are. And then on top of that, you have to deal with the noise. They make 70 to 80 decibels of noise on the lower end. They sound like jet engines. You cannot have them in the same room as you and be a sane person. So you can modify them with different big fans, ducted fans, to make them quieter. But ultimately, you're going to have all these different considerations. You have to kind of build a specialized area just for them at your house. Or you can do like I've done and host them somewhere. And I will talk more about that also in just a moment. But if you don't have, that set up ready, your electric rate is too high, well, then maybe what you can look into doing is doing some lottery mining, which are really small, little low power devices that might win the lottery and hit a Bitcoin block and maybe make you hundreds of thousands of dollars, which that has happened in the past. It's extremely rare. It's very unlikely. It's literally like playing the lottery. But that's a fun way to get into this and at least learn about how Bitcoin mining works. These miners are between like $100 to $300. I've got a video on one of those. The other application you could consider at your house if your electric rate isn't super cheap is a Bitcoin mining heater. If you run space heaters in your house and you're in a colder climate, that's wasted electricity. So you could mine Bitcoin and heat your house with a Bitcoin miner. There's specialized ones for this, so you can do some DIY. I've made a video about at least one of them. And even if it's not profitable, you're at least earning something back that you would otherwise be totally wasting. Plus, you get to learn all about mining. So there are a few things you can do to mine at home. But for a lot of people, it's just easier to host them elsewhere. Now, is it better to mine Bitcoin or to just buy it and hold it? And this is kind of the age-old question. A lot of people, ask me, would I have been better off if I spent all the money I spent on miners on Bitcoin directly? And the answer is I don't know. I will say that I've done both. As much money as I've put into Bitcoin mining, I've put that much or more into Bitcoin directly. So I'm kind of hedging my bet. But I view it like this. Buying Bitcoin directly is a sure thing. Not that it's a sure thing investment, but you know exactly how much Bitcoin you're going to get the day you're buying it. It's a guaranteed market rate. So whatever Bitcoin is that day, however much you're putting in, at the end of that equation, if you're buying it right then and there, how much you're going to get. That's locked in forever. Now, if you waited a day, you might have got more. If you waited a day, you might have got less. But whatever the market rate is, that's a known quantity. Mining is a gamble. Mining, you do not know how much you're going to get out of the equation. The mining difficulty constantly goes up, so you get less and less Bitcoin. But there's also other considerations, like I mentioned earlier, Bitcoin transaction fees. If we get into a situation where Bitcoin is $250,000, everyone's going crazy trading it. They're sending it, receiving it. There's all kinds of activity. People are doing all this funny business of kind of Bitcoin DeFi on the chain and doing ordinals and all this kind of almost NFT type stuff on Bitcoin. That inflates the transaction fees on Bitcoin. The transaction fees are what you pay when you send your Bitcoin or things on Bitcoin from one wallet address to another, to a friend, a family, to an exchange, to another wallet, whatever. You have to pay a fee. And those fees are usually reasonable, but in bull runs, when everything's going crazy, they get inflated. And some of those factors I just mentioned could make those fees get crazy inflated. And the cool thing is, as a Bitcoin miner, you are the ones who earn those fees. So if things went as crazy as I think they possibly could, this year or next, then you could make as much or more just from the fees that you would from the block rewards you're mining right now. And then there's also the machines themselves. If Bitcoin goes high enough, if there's enough craze and mania around it, the machines are worth money and you can sell them and get money back that you could put directly into Bitcoin. So can you earn more Bitcoin from mining than you could buying it? Yes. Is it a guarantee? Absolutely not. Is it even like incredibly likely? No, it's very hard to predict, but it's a gamble that I really wanted to take to see how this multi-year experiment would pan out. And so far, it's really close. At this stage, I've almost mined as much Bitcoin as I could have bought if I were just buying it, but not quite. So I think 2025 is going to be the year that tells me whether the mining experiment was truly worth it or not. But we'll have to find out and see together. So what are some of the risks of investing in Bitcoin mining? The biggest one is just that, if you were going to buy Bitcoin directly, you buy miners instead or something, it's that you don't get as much Bitcoin as you could have otherwise. The other thing is the price volatility. You can buy and the price goes down and you earn less and less. The difficulty goes up. There's also the risk of hardware failure. You can buy a machine and the machine only runs for a short time, or maybe it runs a full year and then it dies and it's outside of warranty and maybe it's dead to such a degree that you can't get it fixed. It has to be replaced. It's another cost. So there are a number of variables, moving pieces, and things to consider when it comes to mining versus just buying. Whereas just buying is very, very simplistic. But with all of those risks come quite a bit of upside potential, but you have to weigh those things. So, if you want to get started, again, there's lots of great videos out there about how to run these at home. Like my friend, the Hobbyist Miner, has a bunch of those types of videos. But if you want to not deal with any of that and have it truly be hands off, well, I work with Musk Miners. That's been my go-to hosting company for the past 3 years. There'll be a link to them down in the description if you want to reach out. There is a discount code there of $100 off each machine, or you can join Sleep Money Club. And if you become a legendary member of Sleep Money Club, which is my private premium crypto membership, you can get $230 each unit, and you can get an even cheaper hosting rate. Or if you want to get into like lottery miners, little tiny home miners, and stuff like that, well, then there's also going to be a link down to Helium Deploy, where there's a couple of those that I think are pretty cool. Now let me get to the part of this episode where I answer a bunch of the common questions that you have literally asked me, because I asked you on Twitter and on YouTube, what are some of your top questions? And these are those questions. So the first one is, how have changes in the network difficulty over time impacted my mining strategy? Well, there's a fairly obvious one, which is as the mine difficulty goes higher, I earn less and less Bitcoin. And so, as you want the network to grow, you want more miners to come online because that makes Bitcoin more secure. But that does mean you have to constantly, reassess your models. If you're going to be planning this out over multiple years, you do a spreadsheet and you kind of figure how much money, how much Bitcoin could I make? Well, you have to make some assumptions about where the network difficulty could go. And you can be overly conservative and say it's going to, race way higher than expected and be, pleasantly surprised, or you can estimate lower, or maybe you think there's some economic and like market conditions coming up that will impact that. But either way, the reality is that the amount of Bitcoin I was mining 2 years ago was significantly higher than what I'm mining today. But I assume that what I'm mining today will be significantly higher than what I could be mining in 2 years' time. So my biggest takeaway with network difficulty and seeing how that impacts my strategy is there's no time like the present. How long does an average new Bitcoin miner last before maintenance, or it is straight up cooked? I have 27 machines. And a big chunk of those have been running for nearly the entire 3-year period I've been mining. And of all of those, 2 of my machines have failed completely and I had to replace them. And 2 other ones had a single hash board. Each machine has a couple of these, usually like 3 of these hash boards, which have the chips on there that are doing the computation. Had a hash board fail so that they're at 3/4 their old hash rate. The good news is if you have a hash board failure, the machine can keep on hashing. It's just at a reduced capacity. So really 4 of my machines have had either complete failure or complete failure of a portion of the machine. And then I've had maybe 1 or 2 that the power supply died, but that's such an easy fix. I think those machines were down for maybe 2 days tops before they swapped out the power supply, and that's usually done under warranty. So I personally had a great track record of only a couple of machines having any kind of major issues in the span of 3 years. Most people who are in this will say that machines last anywhere from 2 to 5 years. Of course, they could last a lot less, or they could last a lot longer. And there's the question of the hardware itself, how long is it operating and continue to function? But then there's also the question of profitability. How long do they last where they're still profitable? And that's completely dependent on the price of Bitcoin. But I have personally so far found the 3 to 5 year or 2 to 5 year thing to be accurate-ish. I'll see over this next year or by the following year if I have any more failures. But that's where I've been at so far. What is the least expensive method for getting into mining for someone who wants to contribute to the network and earn a little something at the same time? This is where I think the lottery miners are a good fit, the really little ones, or taking a step up to some of the slightly bigger home Bitcoin miners. Like by the time this comes out, maybe my video about the Canaan Nano 3S will be out. There's a couple other ones that are between 1 to 6 to 10 terahash and use between 50 to 200 watts. Very small amounts. You plug them into any outlet in your house. That's a great way to get started where you're actually mining. There's also things like the FutureBit Apollo, where you're running a Bitcoin node, but it also has a miner built in for doing some lottery mining, or if your electric is cheap enough, you'll actually earn some profit. Then, of course, there's, again, like I mentioned before, the Bitcoin heaters. Like I've covered one from Altair Technology that I like quite a bit. This plugs into a normal outlet. It's a great way to dip your toes into Bitcoin mining. And even if it's not incredibly profitable or profitable at all, if you need that heat, if you need to use it, well, then you are getting something out of that, plus earning something back in the form of Bitcoin. Given the fact that you have to pay taxes on mined Bitcoin, if you had bought Bitcoin instead of the miners for the same price and then dollar cost averaged in the electric cost along the way into Bitcoin, which method would yield more Bitcoin once you take out capital gains? Well, you take out capital gains either way. Bitcoin mining industry, you have to pay taxes on that normal income you get on a monthly basis or however you categorize it. And like I said previously, the answer right now is I would have got more Bitcoin if I just bought it. That's the answer today. That answer might, and I'm hoping it changes by the end of this year or next year, but it's close. If I had taken all the money I spent on machines and the money I've spent on electricity so far and bought Bitcoin instead directly, I'd have just a bit over 4, maybe 4.25 BTC for my money. And with mining so far, I'm at like 3.5 BTC. But again, this year will be very telling. So if you're really on the fence about mining versus buying, my recommendation, if you like both options, is just do both. Every dollar you put into mining, put into buying. That's basically been how I've handled it. Or just buy if you're really not sure about this whole mining thing. Would you buy shares of mining stock? I have. I own a number of shares of different mining stocks. Not any kind of big positions. I've also invested in early stage Bitcoin mining companies like Quantum Expeditions, which I have made a video about in the past. But the bulk of my Bitcoin mining investment has been in my own machines that I own myself that are hosted for me. Am I reinvesting profit to purchase more efficient miners? Not from my Bitcoin machines. I take many of the profits from my nodes and staking and all the other and the DePIN things and all the other stuff I'm in, and I will use that to purchase new machines to mine Bitcoin with. But all the Bitcoin that I mine, I do not touch. It's for far, far into the future, so I'm not trying to spend any of that now. And the follow-up question to that, do you take a percentage of the profit and invest in other items to try and multiply your earnings? Yes, taking money from all my other crypto passive income sources to do that. No, I don't sell any of my Bitcoin to do that. How many machines do I have with Musk mining? What's the cost of Musk versus doing it on my own? I have all my machines, all 27 machines with Musk miners. All my latest machines are at 7.5 cents per kilowatt hour as my all-in hosting rate. There's no other fees other than paying that electric rate. I get that it's the same discount that legendary members of Sleep Money Club get. I would be paying significantly more if I was running these at my home, not just for building up the infrastructure to run 27 machines, because that's a lot. That's 90,000 watts or something of power, but also my electric rate here at home, especially during peak hours during the summer, is very close to double what I'm paying at Musk. I'm familiar with mining in general and want to get into Bitcoin. Who are the best hosts and which machines should I consider? As far as best hosts, there's lots of other people who recommend lots of other hosts. I can't do that because literally the only host I've ever used and worked with is Musk Mining. I've been with them for almost 3 years now. They've been great. So I can only say that I've had a very positive experience with them, and that's my go-to. As far as what machines you should consider, the machines I've been buying lately are Bitmain S21 XP 270 terahash units. They cost the same as two normal S21s, but they make the exact same amount in terms of profit, but you spend less in electricity because they use half as much electricity. And I also feel much better about those in terms of reselling or flipping them this cycle. So that's the latest ones I've been buying just because of the efficiency and future value and what they're yielding today. Looking back, what would you do differently? I think I would buy less machines all at once, and I would dollar cost average into the machines over a broader spectrum of time. I bought like when I first bought my machines, it was like 6 or 7 at once, and then it was 9 at once, and then I bought 6. And that is kind of dollar cost averaging because I was buying it over the course of 3 years. But if I bought a little, some of the beginning get me started, then I bought 1 or 2, and then like 3 months later, I bought another 2 or 3. Then again, my average cost would be significantly lower without, I think, affecting just how much it's actually yielded all that much. I think the other thing I'd probably do differently is I would diversify my mining portfolio a little bit more. I wish I had bought some script miners, which mine like Dogecoin and a bunch of other stuff. I wish I had bought some of those a little bit sooner. Because even if I'd just been selling all that along the way to get me more Bitcoin, that would have yielded me far more Bitcoin. Those machines have turned out to be incredibly profitable. So that's maybe a few things I would do differently if I could do it all over again. What units do I run? How many total terahash am I rocking? 3.7 petahash in total. I've got a bunch of S19 110 terahash, S19J Pro 104 terahash, some S19K 120 terahash machines. I think about 6 S21 200 terahash, and now 2 S21 XP 270 terahash units. If I had access to 0% interest for 18 months of debt or loan, would it be worth buying some miners with that? People ask me versions of this all the time, and first off, anything I say, do whatever you want. If you're looking for me to give you approval to go do something like this, then you're approaching this from the wrong angle. I personally never ever advocate for using debt to buy incredibly risky things like crypto. I believe Bitcoin is the future. I believe Bitcoin is only going up in the future. I think it's one of the single greatest generational wealth building assets or events in our lifetimes. At the same time, it could all fail. It could all come crumbling down. All this stuff could just not work out. And so if you leverage yourself and things do come crashing down, then that loss is compounded because not only do you lose everything you invested, but you still owe and you still have to pay interest and all this stuff. So that's what I'll say generally about that. But I've known lots of people who've used leverage with, great success. I have personally used it in various capacities. I still think it's better to do without. But that's your choice and whether you can actually manage it. I think it's an easier answer if you're using debt like that, but you have the cash ready, sitting in a bank account. You just don't want to use that cash. So instead you use debt, but you could at any moment, any second, pay it all off in a heartbeat. That, incredibly reduces your risk profile. But easy money is easy for a reason. So if you're going to take someone else's money, which is easier to get than earning your own, just know that there's incredible implications if you get it wrong. How do you pay the bills if you don't sell the Bitcoin? This is handled a bunch of different ways. One, I have like 30 other crypto passive income sources, and those have often been the way I pay my Bitcoin bills because at the end of the day, I just want more Bitcoin. I care a lot more about my Bitcoin earnings than I do about any of my other earnings. But also, I've just never scaled my Bitcoin operation past the point where I can't just pay out of pocket with my normal, well, normal job stuff. What I'm talking to you right now, doing my normal job, YouTube and all this is my normal job. But just the income I pay myself into my own checking account, um, that amount of money can always cover all my normal bills, all my normal finances. But on top of that, also my entire Bitcoin mining operation. I don't always have to pay it out of pocket like that. But the goal for me is to just not sell any of the Bitcoin. So if you scale to a point where you have to sell the Bitcoin to pay your bills, then you might have overextended. So be real careful about how you do that, unless you're just doing it for the daily profitability, which some people advocate for that. I think that's a really short-sighted way to do Bitcoin mining because if you look at history, everyone who sold Bitcoin along the way from, especially mining, has regretted it when it goes to new all-time highs. But your mileage may vary and everyone is different. Is cloud mining a better alternative to setting up my own rigs? I think with hardly any exceptions, cloud mining is a scam. I've never really seen any cloud mining things where you actually get more money out than you put in. Um, the economics of how those things are set up, it just doesn't make any sense why they would sell that if it's actually so profitable. It makes more sense why a hosting company would sell machines if they're so profitable or something, because there's a huge amount of overhead risk with them using their own money to deploy and do all these different things. Whereas if they're simply providing infrastructure and hosting other people's rigs, that's a very different type of business. Whereas cloud mining is they set up all the infrastructure, they own all the machines, and they're renting them out to you. But they have to do that at a loss to them, technically. Now, there is some ways where they can do that to where they're offsetting some of their risk, and you actually can make some money because they're not interested in the Bitcoin. They're just interested in the US dollars or whatever fiat they're getting on that part of the business. So there are some legit ones, but they hardly make any money because of all the fees and various things. And again, most of the ones I've seen out there really just scream scam to me. But, I'm certainly not the definitive end all be all when it comes to answering that one. And as an extension to that, like what about, NFT mining projects and companies? I think this stage where I've invested in a few of them and they've all failed, I think that's also, a tough prospect. Though those don't have a great track record, most of the time, the people who start them up don't really have any experience doing all this stuff. So that's why I rely on people who've been doing this stuff for years and have established businesses, and I just let them handle my machines versus someone who just started up, trusting them to get all the infrastructure and the power and all these things right, because most people end up not getting it right. Can you mine Bitcoin on your gaming computer or just a laptop or whatever? And the answer is yes, you technically can. If you're actually mining Bitcoin directly, though, you will make fractions of pennies doing it because you can't compete against these super powerful machines that are out there now that are specialized just for Bitcoin mining. But you could point your gaming PC or your laptop or something to a service like NiceHash or some other service where it just mines whatever is the most profitable on that hardware and then auto converts and pays you out in Bitcoin. So you're not actually mining Bitcoin with your gaming PC, but you get paid out in it. At this stage in the market, though, most people will not be profitable doing that. But it is a great way to learn the ropes a little bit and see kind of what this whole mining thing is all about. And it has very low consequences because you're just out the amount it costs to run the electricity for that machine, which is usually pretty low. But if you have any hopes to buy a bunch of gaming computers and stuff like that just to mine Bitcoin, unfortunately, I'm here to dash those hopes. So let me wrap this whole thing up. Is it still worth it to mine Bitcoin? And I think the answer is obviously yes for me because I'm still buying machines. But the answer is completely dependent on you, your outlook, your goals, your risk tolerances. So some good questions to ask yourself. Uh, is Bitcoin going to be higher in price and fiat valuation in the future than it is today? Do you think that as it goes higher, Bitcoin machines will continue to be profitable? Do you think there's a chance you could earn an unequal amount of money through Bitcoin transaction fees in a heightened kind of bull market? Do you think that the machines you buy today could, if Bitcoin goes to 150, 250 or higher thousands of dollars, they could hold their value pretty well or even go up in price? Which there's a lot of historic basis for that actually happening every single cycle. If you answered yes to all those or most of those, then Bitcoin mining is maybe a good fit for you, and it's probably worth it because there are positive, not just the profitability and the other great reasons why you would want to do it, but there's also other positive things that come out of it, from tax implications like depreciating the machines themselves and other things. So, running this all through an LLC, have a video on that with a tax pro. There's a bunch of reasons why you might consider doing it, but also, I think it's worth a consideration if you believe the gamble could work out in your favor, in that the machine prices go up, transaction fees go up, and you end up making more Bitcoin than you could have if you just bought straight up. But let me make this crystal clear. It is far easier, it's far more predictable, and it's way more of a sure thing to just buy Bitcoin and forego all this mining stuff. But if you don't mind a little complication, if you don't mind the occasional little headache, if you don't mind doling out some money to pay your hosting fees every month if you're going to host it, if you want to live on the wild side a little bit and you think it's the gamble, there's something to the gamble that it could, that bet could go in your direction, well then, yeah, I'm a huge fan of it. I love Bitcoin. I love supporting the network. I love getting paid Bitcoin passively into my wallet every single week without me thinking about it. It's an incredible feeling. So far, it's been incredibly profitable for me, and I'm hoping that the rest of this year and next year are even more profitable. So, as a crypto enthusiast who's been doing this for a few years, it's absolutely worth it for me. I don't think it's too late. I think crypto and especially Bitcoin are still at the very baby step stages of their overall adoption curve. So, getting in now is still incredibly early, but, it's not for everybody. So that's what the purpose of this was, to give you lots of information so you can assimilate it into your brain and decide, is this for me or not? And it might not be. But either way, I appreciate you listening in on this episode. I love talking about Bitcoin. I appreciate you if you dropped your question into the submissions. So thank you for listening, and I will catch you in the next episode of the podcast.